All right, good to go.
Okay, so I had been 3 weeks then at Shands in ICU, and they decided that maybe they could try to give me a little therapy because I hadn't really been out of bed for those 3 weeks. So they started to get me up, and my blood pressure plummeted to 65 over 35, and boom, crash, I went. Well, they just decided that maybe it wasn't a good idea. So they got me stabilized, and the ambulance driver took me back again to um, the local hospital here in St. Augustine, Flagler, for some therapy. And maybe they'd try that, where there's actual therapists there working with people that sort of had something like this happen. But I'm still told I am in medical journals as the only survivor in the world. And I have met neurosurgeons from all over the world who came to my appointments to see what kind of therapy I was getting. They wanted me to walk for them, which was like so embarrassing. um, because I used to have friends that would say, "Oh, Linda, you don't even walk, you undulate." And now I look more like the Bride of Frankenstein. and so we did the therapy. We got into the hospital that night, but I felt like something was really I felt like there was a fever inside of me. I was feeling very, very hot. And even in the transport ambulance, I felt very hot. In fact, the driver asked me once, we're going through Palatka. He said, "Do you want something cold to drink?" I go, "Oh, yes, I would love that." So he pulled into Wendy's in Palatka, and I think he got himself a hamburger and fries because I could smell him in the back of the transport. And I had a cold drink, and but still, when we got in to ER and they checked me in, something wasn't right. And after a week or so, a male doctor and a female doctor each did like 3 spinal taps on me, and they confirmed that I had spinal meningitis. And they were just pumping me full of antibiotics, but I was not responding. And it was getting close to Mother's Day by this time. And my daughter told me she was going to bring the girls to see me. And I noticed that all of my friends started showing up at the hospital all at once. And I did not know that my daughter had told them, "If you want to see Mom, you better go now, because we don't think she's going to be here much longer." So I remember in my bed trying so hard for 2 days because I knew the girls were coming, and they were 2 and 4, and they were rambunctious, ornery little girls. And so I had tried so hard to move myself in the bed by holding on to the bars, but there I was, like night turned to day turned to night, and I couldn't move. So Sunday came. Christy came with the girls, and they were so quiet. She must have really talked to them. And Hannah came over and sat beside me. And remember, I still had my hands on the bars because I was trying so hard. And she looked down. She goes, "Oh, Mimi." She was rubbing my hand. "I love you so much." "Ooh, you've got tape balls. Can I pick them off?" And I had to laugh. I mean, she was so ornery. And so we giggled at that. And then the nurses came in and said, well, they were going to take me down and get an MRI, that she best probably take the girls and leave now. So she said, "Well, I'll take the girls out to my husband, but I'm going to stay." And so they took me down to the MRI, and I was in so much pain. And I felt like I was probably in the throes of the pain of death. And I was kind of leaning on my right shoulder, and Scotty climbed in the tunnel with me, my son Scotty, my deceased son Scotty. Now, Scotty was 32 when he was killed, but he was 21 when he entered the tunnel with me. And I know that because I have a picture of him blowing out the candles on his 21st birthday. And he looked just like that, the mullet and everything. And he was grinning from ear to ear. And people have asked me, do you think you were out of body during this time? And I went, I don't know. And they said, well, draw for us what you saw. And when I drew the drawing, I realized that I was hovering over and above myself and Scotty. And Scotty was on his right knee, and even in my drawing. And he said, Mama, I've come to take you home. And I said, Scotty, I can't. It's not my time. I have too many paintings to paint. He goes, oh, Mom. He said, it's not your call. And he started to say Psalm 23. And when he got to the 4th verse, where it says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. And when he said that, the entire tunnel lit up whiter than white. With that, I heard Christy out in the hallway scream for the nurses, get her out, she's dying. And I learned later she just slumped to the floor after that. And so they got me out. They weren't prepared for someone to flatline in the MRI tunnel. And it's on my records that I was out or flatline for 7 minutes. And this is how God is. When I talked earlier about, but God, meanwhile, God, he's always planning. The fact that I had bought a house that had 1 to 2 steps up versus 28 steps up, 32 steps up my restaurant. The fact that God was preparing his orchestration of his plan, but I didn't know it. But now I can look back on it and see it. So when Christy slumped, they got the paddles, they got out everything, and were shooting me up in the stomach with everything that your organs are supposed to be doing. My left lung had collapsed. All I remember them doing is throwing me on a gurney and saying, Dr. Foote ordered me back to Shands in Gainesville, another ambulance ride. And so what happened was, when this happened and Christy gathered herself together, she ran to the phone, called my husband at the restaurant and said, you better get here. Mom just flatlined. If you want to see her alive, you better get here. And he said, would you like to speak with Dr. Foote? And she said, yes. Why? And Dr. Foote, because it was Mother's Day, had decided to take his mother to my restaurant because he had never been there. And Christy said, Dr. Foote, Mom's really bad. It's really bad. She flatlined. And they resuscitated her. And he said, is she at the local hospital? He said, I've been trying to call them. I need to see her. She's not getting the help she's needing. He overrode the hospital, brought me back into Shands, put me in a pod for 5 days. There's 8 pods there were at that time in that hospital. And they took care of me, brought me back to life again, because the only relief I was getting before that with the fever was when a little nurse at midnight would come in and bathe me. And she always kept in her pocket pictures of her kids to share with me. And when they brought me back from Shands then to Flagler, the ambulance driver said, well, he said, I've never seen this in my life. When he pulled in, 7 nurses came running out. They said, oh, Linda, we've got your suite ready. We've got all your plants are taken care of, all your teddy bears, everything. It's beautiful. And so therapy began, but it was really hard, really hard. They put a belt on me with therapists on each side, I think two on each side, and I literally swung from therapist to therapist because my legs weren't working. They tried to encourage me to paint. They tried everything to encourage me. But you know what? I thought, and if you know anything about me as an author, you know my little character, Henry the Tulip Bulb. Well, he had been with me since 1983, and I thought with this, I think Henry and I are probably done with what we're going to do. Even had a so-called friend say to me, you better do something or you're going to be living under the bridge. I wasn't driving. I could barely brush my teeth. And I'm a teeth fanatic. So, if you have things that you're going through in your life and you want to give up and you don't see a plan and you don't feel the presence of God, I want to tell you so much that meanwhile, He's orchestrating His plan. Don't you give up. Don't you ever give up. I am living proof.